ROSCMO podcast. I'm very glad you could join us today.
Thanks for having me.
So, Elizabeth, I have to start out and ask, you obviously like green. What is the story behind green?
Well, a few years ago, I was getting my headshots done and I had a green dress in my wardrobe picked out. I didn't really have a solid brand for myself as a speaker and as a coach. My business had a brand, but not me personally. So I just thought, you know what, I'll just try a few different things, see what happens. Well, I had this green dress. I wore it. I started using the picture because obviously redheads look good in green. And people started recognizing me and saying, I saw your green dress the other day. I saw it because they saw this picture everywhere. It was my profile picture. And they said, oh, they kept associating it with me. And then I started getting people saying, I saw your green at a store. I saw your green as a cup, all these different things. And I started realizing that if I didn't wear it every single time I went out in a business capacity, then I was losing an opportunity to promote my own brand. So now every time I speak, a podcast, anything that I do that's public facing with my business, I wear green, and people really do associate it. And I've actually had people come to me and say, they've called me on the phone. They said, wait, you're the green dress girl, right? Yeah, yes, that's me.
I think that's great. That's because that shows the power of branding, right?
Absolutely.
And so it was something I immediately picked up when we talked about doing this podcast together. I noticed that all your headshots and pictures were green. When I went to your website, that was green. And yes, it does stick with you. You are the lady in the green dress.
Yep.
That's amazing. So how long have you been doing this?
Well, I've been building websites since 2000, so almost 20 years. And I've had my own business since 2007. So I've been in the business world for a while. And, I really have just found out my own love for running my business. And I ran a computer company, a tech company. We went into people's homes and fixed their computers. And so when I was running my own business, I realized there's a lot of other businesses out there who don't know how to market themselves. And I had gotten really good at it for this tech company. And so then I started teaching other people how to do that and speaking on it, what I had done to gain my success. And I realized that I could go back to my first love, which was building websites, and incorporate all the things I had learned as a business owner. So that's really how I got started and everything. And it's been a long time. I never started in my business thinking, oh, I'm going to have a 13-year-old business someday. It's just kind of happened.
So, Elizabeth, I wanted to ask you, one of the things I know that you've talked about is this idea that from business owners, they get very frustrated because they think that they're doing things right, but they're not really seeing the results. What can you tell me about the interactions that you have with your clients, and why do they come to a marketing professional?
Well, I think the guru culture that we've created for ourselves has led to a lot of disappointment, unfortunately. And what we don't see sometimes is behind the scenes, there's a lot of ad spend going on to get some of these results, or a lot of money being pumped in beforehand, a lot of investment that's not really talked about so much. And this can lead a lot of people to think, well, it's pretty easy. Well, I'll just gain a following. I'll get a Twitter following. I'll get a Periscope, whatever you're doing, a Pinterest following. And they make it sound so easy. And I feel like it actually is a very easy thing to do, is to create a following and actually gain traction, but maybe not in the exact way that we're being shown, from a larger standpoint. So I try to get people to look at it a little more realistically. And the results are actually what you make them. And what I try to use social media for specifically is more of a touch result. Because when people were seeing me in that green dress, they were seeing my profile picture on social media in 5 or 6 different places. They were seeing me on my website. That's another touch. In the emails I sent, my picture was there, or a picture of me was there. In the blog posts that I wrote, they would be on my website. They'd see more pictures. So those types of things can create that consistency. And when you have that running throughout your entire brand and your entire business, that's all touches. And you don't really know who's viewing them at any given time, from one person to the next. You don't see one person's, little counter above their head going, okay, they touched 1 time, touched 2 times. And so we don't have that kind of data. We just know that people are viewing it in some capacity. And so what we really have to just do is say, okay, this is my marketing as a whole, rather than looking at just social media or just blogging or just this or just that. So that's kind of the mistake I see a lot of people make, is just that they get disappointed because they focus so much on one piece that they've been told is the golden ticket. And it's really not. It's about a whole strategy and bunch of little pieces that link together to actually make a great success.
You said a couple really interesting things there, and I couldn't agree more because if you take something like Facebook stories, for example,
Yeah.
you can put something up there and you might not get any engagement from it or maybe, one or two comments. But if you look, 50 people have watched it or 100 people have watched it. And so every time you're putting something out there, you may be getting attention on it. It just might not be deriving feedback back to you,
Hmm.
which then makes you feel like your efforts aren't successful. And so, keeping you as the example here, with the green, the green is constantly showing up as your brand. And so you're getting that exposure over and over. It doesn't mean that everybody's going to connect with you every time that they see it, but you're
Right.
building that brand out there. I think that's such an excellent point. And that's something that you coach your clients on.
Absolutely. I've even had clients, who've said that, well, you've gotten such good success. Well, you're wearing the green. And when we sit down to do their branding, I will sometimes create their brand around colors I know they can wear, like personally, because everybody wears a different color differently. I had one girl, she was an editor, and we ended up creating her logo, and it had yellow in it, yellow and navy. And she was like, yellow's awful. I would never wear yellow. And I said, that's fine. You don't have to. I just think this is the best colors for your brand based on, what your core values are and how colors have, there's a psychology behind color. And so I really build brands on that, the psychology of color, psychology of fonts. And I also knew that if she really wanted to, she could pull off yellow and navy. And she just was like, no, not going to happen. Not going to happen. 6 weeks later, we worked together. Everything was great. She was thrilled with her brand. 6 weeks go by. She sends me a photo of a store window that has yellow top with navy white striped pants. I mean, it was like this gorgeous outfit, beautiful, would have fit her to a T, perfect style. And she says, I'm really thinking about walking in and buying this. And it was because she had embodied that brand. She had really taken on what it meant to be the engaged editor, which is what we called her business. And so she kind of, it grew on her that she did have a color. She did have, and it's not always about the color. Anybody can wear yellow, anybody can wear green, but it's about how you embody that and you make it part of your everyday lifestyle. So I really try and get people to see that when you run a business, when you have a business, especially when it's your own personal business, it's not just about, what you do or what you actually say. It's more also about you actually living it every single day and embodying it through everything that you do.
I would agree. I just got done watching a keynote for the Apple Developers Conference. And, Apple is such an iconic brand, but you could literally be walking down the street and peer into a store without seeing any signage. And you could say that's an Apple store because
Yep.
they embody sort of that brand. So I think that's important. Yeah, obviously clothing. You've got people who have very distinctive sunglasses, or Steve
Right.
Jobs always wore the black turtleneck. You've got
Yep.
that, but there's a lot that can really talk about what your brand stands for. Now, you
Mhm.
work with a very specific kind of clientele. Talk to me a little bit about that.
I started out with small businesses and I still work with small businesses, but I've also branched into working with nonprofits. I had a couple of them come to me several years ago and they needed marketing help, just like small businesses do, because essentially they're businesses, but they just have a different output when it comes to their profit. So, I decided that, our business models that we had built for all the marketing stuff we were doing could actually work for nonprofits too. And with a little few tweaks, it works beautifully. So we've worked with a lot of nonprofits to help them figure out what a budget should be for marketing. A lot of nonprofit directors, they kind of come into this with their passion. They come into this with, what they know they want to accomplish rather than knowing everything about business. And so we're really there to help guide and say, here's what a marketing budget should look like. Here's what a marketing budget should include when it comes to what's actually going to be done for you over the course of, let's say, a year. And we really try and help them kind of navigate those waters without them having to take a ton of time away from their actual mission that they're trying to accomplish.
It's interesting because I think some people would say, oh, nonprofits, I don't want to go there because they don't have money to spend on those things. But it can actually be the reverse, right? They
Yeah.
have to generate a lot of interest in what they're doing because they rely on donations and money coming in. And so they tend to do a lot of marketing.
That's true. And what we actually offer to nonprofits is a little bit different. we actually offer them a percentage-based pricing. Now, if I went to a business owner today and I said, if you give me 4% of your revenue from last year in, the coming year, I'm going to do all your marketing for you. And I tell them all the things I would do. They would laugh me out of town. They'd be like, 4% of my, no way, I'm not going to give you 4% of my money. They're going to not look at it that way. But when you go to a nonprofit and you say, if you give me 4% of last year's amount this year, we're going to try and double that. We're going to try and whatever their goal is, we're going to try and accomplish that goal for them with the marketing. They look at it and they go, 4%? Nothing. I take my money all day. It's golden. And each nonprofit is at a different level, just like the businesses are. But they don't look at the money the same way. They have boards that are in place. They have budgets that they have to complete. There's all these rules and regulations of things that they need to do. And we're just there to help say, make this budget line item easy. 4% done. Everything is taken care of. Website, everything is done. So it's really interesting to see how small businesses will look at it and say, I'll pay $2,000 a month for SEO. And then a nonprofit is like, we can't afford that. But then you talk to them about 4% of their income and they're like, no problem. So it's just about all how they look at it and how they view things, and talking to them in the right, tones too. So when we talk to small businesses, like I said, that 4% thing really isn't going to fly. They need hard, solid numbers that they can look at. But when you talk to a nonprofit, that 4% makes it just so easy. And they're like, yes, this is what I need. So, just talking to them different ways. That's how we really go about that.
Really understanding how your customers buy and speaking in their language. Yeah, that's super important. So when you come in, I know one of the services that you offer is borrow a CMO. Talk to me a little bit about how you frame this borrow the CMO model.
So I've been doing this for so long that I've been able to work with people for just a few hours and get them going in directions that they maybe wanted to go or didn't think they had the ability to go in. And now they're just like off and running with all the ideas and everything. So what I decided a little while ago was to create something that was just borrow me for the day. We don't need to have a long-term contract. We don't need to have all this stuff created, because I can literally walk into any business, any nonprofit, and sit down for a day and say, okay, tell me what you got going on, coming in fresh. I don't like to do a ton of prep because that kind of can cloud my judgment and maybe give me ideas that aren't there. And so I just come in fresh and say, tell me what's going on. And I look at it from that outsider perspective. And sometimes when it's a nonprofit or a small business that has a team that's trying to do all the things together, they may not know what direction to send those people or what their strengths and weaknesses are. So I can kind of quickly assess that just by sitting with them, talking with them, figuring out where the holes are in education or in delegation, and redelegate, re-educate in a short amount of time, and then set them off on tasks so that that person who's in charge of all of this can watch what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, observe in a way, and then realize that they don't have to be as complicated maybe as they were trying to be, or it doesn't have to be as lengthy as it might seem to be initially. So it's just more of a teaching and learning experience for everybody. And then after we do that just one day, it's an 8-hour period, and we just get everything out on the table and make sure everybody has a task. And then we come back 4 weeks later and do just a follow-up call with just about an hour long, and we just talk with everybody. How did the experience go? Where are you with deadlines? Things like that, just to make sure that they're all still on the right track. And then also talk with the person who's in charge of the team, the owner or whoever, and make sure that they're feeling okay about their direction and how they can use the delegation going forward.
So it's really a discovery workshop where you're sort of looking under the covers, seeing what's going on, making some maybe initial recommendations, and then coming back a few weeks later and seeing if there are potentially more opportunities to work together.
Yeah, and a lot of times it just takes one time for people to really get the feel and the hang of it, because sometimes it's just about being shown what to do or how to do it efficiently. And then it's like, oh, it's that simple. Okay, well, I can do this, because sometimes we make these tasks a little bit bigger in our minds than they are, or we make them too complicated. And so this just is a way for someone to just step in who does, I do a lot of this in my own business and in other businesses as well that we work with on an ongoing basis. It's like, just let me come in and show you exactly, boom, 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 done. You don't have to worry about trying to get so much training or more knowledge or more leadership training. It's mostly about the actual tasks and how you delegate them.
So I know you've come up with this framework, Absolute Marketing.
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about what that framework is all about and how then you would use this framework in this kind of a scenario when you come into a business.
So Absolute Marketing is something I created about 2 to 3 years ago. All the timelines get muddled after a while.
I know.
You know what that's like? Yep. So I created it a while ago, and I started realizing that I was stepping through the same process with a lot of my clients. And I was like, wow, I've got a system here. I should kind of write this down. And it was a 5-day system. And we create, the first day, we create a brand and an ebook. We write an ebook as an opt-in. And we talk about all that stuff that goes with branding. It's not just about, the logo, of course. It's about the messaging and the colors and the fonts and everything else that goes with that. Once we have that down solid, that's our foundation. And we then take day 2 and we build a website. Because if you have a great brand, your website takes very little time. It's very easy and very quick, especially if you know that target audience. That's another thing we do on that branding day. So now all these days that I'm going to mention after that, all of the other 4 days, they're like dominoes. They just go down really quickly. The third day is 12 months of social media in a day, where we create 365 posts for an entire year for multiple platforms. And it doesn't have to be complicated or crazy. And it's also stuff that's evergreen. So no matter what's happening, you can always post about COVID if it happens randomly.
Sure.
But all the other stuff is the same. It's going to be the same now until, 2, 3, 5, 20 years from now, possibly. It's all that evergreen content and education that is just going to be there anyway. And then the fourth day, we create 12 months of blog posts. And we basically go into Google and find out what the top questions are for your industry. And once we find out those questions, we basically write a post about each question, because Google is more of a question engine now than a search engine. And we just kind of play to that a little bit. And some of those posts can end up lasting for years and years and really get you a lot of great SEO content after they've been there for a while.
Now, when you say I'm sorry, keep going.
Yeah, day 5, day 5, we take all that stuff we've built and we start creating email marketing campaigns, and we do those for up to a year as well. Sometimes we'll do one a month for maybe a special or something like that, depending on the type of business. And then we'll also push out all the blog posts into separate emails, and we'll also push out maybe your opt-in in your emails to other people as well. So, or if you're doing an event or something like that, we'll put those in there too. So that's all 5 days.
Wow, that's quite a 5 days.
It is.
Now, when you say you write these things, do you literally write the article, or are you just getting the topics together and then that's the ongoing work effort through the year, is to sort of put those on an editorial calendar and get those published?
So everyone asks me this question about the social and the blogging. No, these days are implementation. We are writing, creating, designing, graphics, everything. All of it is done when you walk out the door. So we start around 9 and we end around 5.
Wow, that's a lot of work.
It is.
And you bring in a team of people to do it?
No. Usually it's me and the business owner, and we have our team on the side who might do maybe a few of the graphics or something. But it's very little outside work that we bring in, if any. And a lot of it has to do with not making things so complicated. Like I said, we find those maybe 12 questions. Okay, so one a month. We find 12 questions, and I just start having them answer the questions in like bullet format. Once they got those bullets down, now we just amplify each of those bullets with a sentence or two, put a call to action. I mean, it doesn't have to be complicated. So we make these things really simple, easy to read, and also consumable for people who might be just skimming it while they're running through other, blog posts on the internet.
The challenge, I've had some SEO experts on as well, and the challenge is there are some rules, but then it seems like there are also exceptions to just about every rule. You read all of these statements that said, oh, if you want a high-performing blog post, it should be X number of words long, 600, 1,200, 1,500 words long. And then you'll go and you'll search for some of these keywords or terms, questions, and you will see some of the top-ranking blog posts are 2 or 3 paragraphs long. Yeah.
So I don't even, like I said, I'm not a guru type person. I'm kind of the opposite of that, actually. And I disagree with a lot of the gurus too. So it kind of puts me in a little corner by myself. But when it comes to that, like with the social media, that algorithm proof idea, that we're working outside the algorithm. We're not using social media for the way that they say we should. And the same with blogging. I mean, yes, we want it to gain us SEO, and there's a lot of things you can do. And there's a lot of things that if you hire someone who does SEO, that they'll do on top of everything you've done. So what we're trying to build here in these 5 days is that foundation. Because if you don't start with that foundation from brand all the way through to email marketing, then anybody who comes in to do SEO is going to say, well, your website's kind of crappy. It's not much we can do with it, So you have to have at least a foundation to start with, and consistency, because so many of us, like you said, you build that editorial calendar, you have all the best intentions. January rolls around, you write a blog post. February, it's March, you've written the February blog post. Now it's March, you forget, it's April, and then so on. So it's about building that consistency for you and giving your brain time to be creative. We don't sit down and focus on one thing anymore. I mean, I've had probably 12 calls today, and I've got 4 or 5 more to go. So your brain is constantly switching and gears and doing different things. So when we sit down for a day and we create those blog posts, you are focused on just writing 12 blog posts, and your brain goes, I can be creative. I only have to do one thing today, instead of, bouncing around all over the place.
That's excellent, because I couldn't agree more with that. We do tend to have good intentions about what we want to do down the road. Putting together an editorial or calendar is a great example of that. It's very easy to push it off and push it off and push it off, and then you start to meet your own self-imposed deadlines and you get frustrated. So having a work effort where you can just get a lot of that done, I think makes an awful lot of sense. And I also agree that sometimes having that foundational content is super important. You can spend hours and hours tweaking and making everything just perfect so that all the search engines and the algorithms like it. But you still need to have something for your customers to see, something to give you some credibility. And I think building that foundation is so important. So is this structure that you put together, is this in addition to coaching work that you do, or do you do that sort of separately, one-on-one, based on different use cases?
I do both. So these days are not just implementation. They are coaching built in, because when we do that brand, I'm not saying, okay, what's your brand going to be? And you have to tell me, I don't call myself what I call an order taker. I am more of that partner who's going to help you figure out what that brand is. And I'm going to coach you through the process to find the right words. Sometimes people have a great brand, but they don't have the right name, or they have the wrong, brand, but they have the right name. And so we really work with all different levels and startups, all the way to people who've been in business for 10, 20 years, and help them to see that they have good pieces. And now we just need to polish them off and make them whole. And so, taking all of the days together can really give you a great coaching program, essentially, because then you also get all the work done. But I also do coaching for people who just want, to talk with me one-on-one. I've had people come in and just sit with me for 2 hours, or do a call with me for 2 hours. And they're like, that was brilliant. That's plenty. I am ready to go. I got my list, and they're just off and running. And I love to see that, because there are always going to be people who say, I heard what you said. I implemented it myself. Great job. And I'm happy with that. And then there's going to be people on the other end of the spectrum who are like, I didn't get it. And then those people in the middle, those are your target market. Those are the ones that are going to come to you and say, let's work together. Your process is brilliant. Whatever you're doing is brilliant. I'm ready to dive in. So there's always going to be the people on the edges, and that's good for them. They're going to either maybe not get it, or they're going to take it and run with it. But those people in the middle, that's the sweet spot.
So when you go in and you talk to these clients, do you look for or recommend certain marketing automation tools that they should implement within their business to make a lot of this easier? What are some things that you look for, or that you just outright recommend to them?
Well, I have a page on my website of all the tools that I use, because I believe in sharing that. I don't think it's any kind of proprietary anything. I share everything there. And a lot of these companies are people that I have researched and done, comparisons and years of content where I've just searched and searched and searched and finally found the right thing. And so all the tools that I use in the social media, the website tools that I use, even my privacy policies and all that stuff is all on my website under our tools page.
I think that's great, because this is information that can really make such a difference in a marketer's life. If you're not using certain marketing automation tools, you're really making your life an awful lot harder. I've talked many times on this show about what I believe the importance of CRM is, and being able to keep track of all your customers and your clients and their interactions. But there are a lot of other tools out there to help you manage, if you're doing advertising or you're doing your social media posts, especially if you want to get that automated. You don't want all of those things to be individual tasks that you have to deal with every day. So I know you are also a podcaster yourself.
Yes.
But you've taken a little bit of a different approach to podcasting, right? You don't do long form interviews as much as you do business tips. So talk to me a little bit about your podcast and your philosophy there.
Yeah, so I have done podcasts in the past where I've done long form interviews. I actually used to do them at my women's business lunch that I ran, and I would record the luncheon and I would interview someone during the luncheon and then I would post it. It was a great format, but it kind of faltered and I didn't do as good a job of keeping up with it. And I realized that that wasn't for me to do on my show. So this year, about 5 months ago, I started my Absolute Marketing podcast, which is on iTunes and all the things. And I decided 2 minutes was enough. I could talk for 2 minutes, and sometimes it's hard to keep your point short. But I could talk for 2 minutes about one simple thing. And that could be something as simple as a tool or a tip in marketing or a mindset tip or a money tip. And once I started doing that, I realized I would sit down and have like 10 ideas, and I could podcast for several, an hour or so and get all my ideas recorded and done. And then I found 2 awesome podcasting tools called Elite2 and Podbean, which are amazing. They're on my list. And they help me actually edit and put all my intros and everything together in less than 10 minutes per episode. So not only am I doing a 2-minute podcast, but it only takes me about 10 minutes to make a podcast episode. And we're actually finishing up our first season right now. We just recorded our 20th episode, and we're going to be starting season 2 in a couple of weeks. So I'm very excited about it, and it's been really fun. And I'm actually starting to ask other people now to do 2 minutes and kind of replace me for some of the episodes. So you won't just hear me all the time, but it won't be an interview, but it'll be them giving their own 2-minute tip.
I know Neil Patel's got a very popular podcast, Marketing School, and I think those episodes are 5-7 minutes max or something. So there certainly are a number of very popular podcasts out there that are that shorter format. I think that's great. So Elizabeth, tell everybody where they can find you, where you want to be connected to social media wise, and repeat the name of the podcast one more time for everybody.
Yeah, the podcast is the Absolute Marketing Podcast. And you can find that and other things on my website at beyondthecause.co. That's our marketing firm. And you can also find information about me as a speaker and a coach at elizabethpampalone.com.
That's great, Elizabeth. I've really enjoyed talking with you today. We will have all of those links in the show notes so that people can find you, and they will know they've gotten to the right place when they see the woman in the red dress or in the green dress.
Yeah, the green dress. That's right.
Thinking about Christmas already.
I know.
Yeah. Elizabeth, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.